Welcome back to the Puddin Creek Rod Shop. Now, I say welcome back because many of you guys come back every single Monday to watch our show. But if you're new to the channel, if you were just scrolling through YouTube and stumbled on us, let me tell you who we are. We're a tiny hot rod shop located in the mountains of East Tennessee, and we build and or restore period correct hot rods. Now you're thinking to yourself, period correct hot rods. Does he mean those real cool 1940s and 50s era hot rods that are in style right now that are so cool? Well, yeah, we restore and we build those, and that's what you're looking at right here, the Ford Coupe. But that's not the only period of hot rods that you can restore to period correct. You know, there were a lot of cool hot rods in the 1960s too. Oh, and then there's that forgotten about era, 1970s hot rods. Now, we really like to restore those. And then there's that era of hot rods that everyone loves to hate, the 1980s era hot rods. Now, I'll have to admit, the late 80s hot rods with the graphics and the Easter egg colors, I'm not a big fan of those. But the early 80s hot rods, I really liked those just because they were so revolutionary. I recently posted this clip of the Chrome Shop Coupe on our Puddin Creek Rod Shop Facebook page, and the comments were mixed. Seems like the older guys that lived through this era, they had a lot of respect for this car and talked about the first time they saw it and how cutting edge and revolutionary it was. But the younger guys, they had comments like just another billet aluminum cookie cutter smoothie car from the 80s. Well, this got me to thinking, why such a disconnect between the two generations? Let's rewind back to the 1970s. Right before these smoothie cars came out, the biggest thing going for street rods were resto rods. Not resto mods, resto rods. Now, what's a resto rod? Well, you took a 1930s car and you usually put two-tone paint job on it, fenders brown, body beige, whatever. You put wire wheels on it. Originally, the wire wheels came off of Buick Skylarks, later True Spokes and Zeniths and appliance wheels. But originally, they got them from Buick Skylarks. And you left the cow lights and all the accessories on your car, the Ooga horn. And you look for extra accessories for the inside, maybe a 1930s accessory radio. That was a cool thing to have. Mohair interior, resto rods. Now, I'm telling you all this to let you know the environment, the street rod environment that was going on right before the billet aluminum smoothie look hit. Now, as you can see, when you're used to seeing True Spoke wheels and Buick Skylark wheels and bumpers and extra chrome and cow lights, and then all of a sudden somebody comes up with a smooth car with billet aluminum wheels, it was like seeing a spaceship to us back in the late 70s and early 80s. Now, if I did a little pop quiz with you guys and I asked you, what was the first car that Boyd Coddington got on the cover of a magazine with? Some of you would make a goofy guess and say something like a Boydster, which would be way off. Some of you would say Cadzilla, which wouldn't even be in the ballpark. A few of you would dial it on back and say the Vern Luce Coupe, and you'd be getting a little warmer, but you're still years off from the first cover. The first time that Boyd Coddington got on the cover of a magazine, to my knowledge, was with a resto rod. That's right, back in 1976, Boyd was building resto rods just like everybody else. It's just the quality on this tall T that he built was exceptional, and it's kind of what put his name out there in the hot rod community, this tall T. So how did Boyd go from resto rods to the billet aluminum smoothie look? Well, he'd been using Tom Taylor to do some illustrations, and he told Tom, I'd like to build a 33-34 Ford Coupe, but I'd like to do something really different. So Tom recommended they take a little bit of inspiration from Jim Ewing's Super Bell Axle Coupe, and also take some inspiration from Jake's Yellow Coupe, from Pete and Jake's, and combine some of those ideas and come up with something totally new. Well, Boyd was all for this and went ahead and told him to do an illustration. Well, here's the first illustration that Tom came up with. Now, believe it or not, the Vern Luce Coupe, the car that changed hot rodding forever, brought on the smoothie look and created the whole billet aluminum industry. The car that changed everything started out kind of to be a Bonneville race car look. They were kind of looking back to the 40s, to that chop top, track nose, low, sleek Bonneville look. Now, I tried to take you back to the 70s to show you what was going on when all this came about, the resto rods and street rodding. Oh, just a little side note, I never heard Boyd ever call them street rods. He always called them hot rods. Anyway, resto rods here in America were the big thing, but across the ocean, something totally different was going on. The European cars were ditching all the chrome. They were going monochrome, and a lot of them were red, and I think Boyd pulled some inspiration from that look to work into the Vern Luce Coupe, the car that would change the whole look of hot rodding. So I guess Boyd didn't like the track nose on the original drawing, so he asked Tom Taylor to redraw it with a more traditional 33 Ford grille. Now, if we were all standing around shooting the bull at a car show, and I said to you guys, do you know who the first hot rodder was to make a billet aluminum part and have ball end mill grooves milled in it? Well, 2 or 3 of you standing close would say, that's a stupid question, Puddin' Creek. Everybody knows it's Boyd Coddington. You need to think up some better questions, and while you're at it, think up some better jokes for the videos. But then there'd be this one know-it-all guy in the back, and he'd push forward and elbow 2 of you out of the way to tell me that it was not Boyd Coddington, it was Little John Butera, and that Boyd stole the idea of aluminum parts from Little John. Now, I would have to tell you that you're both wrong. You see, Dan Woods, the famous custom car and hot rod builder from the 1970s, he had this T-bucket that he built with a billet aluminum firewall and ball end mill grooves milled in the firewall as far back as 1975. Now, as far as Boyd stealing the idea of billet aluminum parts from Little John, that's all kind of a gray area. We know Little John was the master. He was kind of a genius. But Boyd had been a machinist at Disneyland, and to think that he hadn't machined a lot of parts out of aluminum, making repairs on those Disneyland rides, is just silly. I know when I started in a machine shop back in the 80s, we made all kinds of parts out of aluminum. Not because we wanted them to look cool, just because aluminum machines way faster than steel. You can make an aluminum part in about half the time you can make a steel part. One more short story, and then we're going to get to work in the shop. Now, when your old buddy Puddin' Creek was just about 18 years old, I got a job in a local machine shop, and the old guy that owned the shop gave me a blueprint one day to make an assembly fixture for a local factory, and he said, I want you to go to the stock room and get some 1-inch thick aluminum and machine this part. Now, for years, I had been reading in Hot Rod and Street Rodder magazine how Little John and Boyd were machining all these parts out of billet aluminum. So when he told me to go get some 1-inch thick aluminum, I looked at him and said, you mean billet aluminum? And he said, what are you talking about, kid? 1-inch thick aluminum, 6061 grade. It's in the stock room. I don't know what you're talking about, this billet stuff. Now go, kid. Break's over. Let's get it. Well, we got the bearings in for the throttle linkage on the bad coupe. Now we can start putting that all back together again. Now, anytime I'm about to press fit a bearing in a part, I always take a micrometer and check the diameter. This one I'm checking against the old bearing to make sure it's the exact same diameter. You never know where your bearings are coming from these days and if they're ground correctly. And you don't want to tear something up trying to press in a bearing that's oversized. Now notice these arms don't have any counter bore to help start the bearing straight down in there. So we'll have to really pay attention to that when we go to press these in and make sure they're perfectly straight. Let me tell you what I mean by a counter bore. Now this is just a quickie sketch. Let's imagine this is the part that we're going to press a bearing down in, and we cut it in half. So this is a cutaway view. So if I'm making this part that's going to get a bearing pressed in it, I'm going to bore the hole all the way through and make it a press fit for the bearing. And then before I take the boring head out of the mill or whatever I'm using to bore the hole, I'm going to adjust it out, and I'm going to make a counter bore that is a slip fit for the bearing that only goes about a 1/16 deep. It could be deeper, it doesn't really matter. You just need enough for your bearing to slip down in there. You can just slip it down with your fingers, and that gets it started perfectly straight in the bore before you start pressing on it with the press. If you get in the habit of doing this every time you bore a hole that gets a press fit bearing in it, your bearings will start straight every time, and it just makes life really easy. Now, I said to make the counter bore a 1/16 of an inch, but I'm thinking about these little bitty bearings that we're working with. If you're pressing in a 4-inch diameter bearing, obviously you want that counter bore to be deeper. You guys get the idea. All right, let's head back to our Carver laboratory press. You guys remember this press, don't you? If you haven't seen the video on this press, go back and check it out. I mean, it's a good one. The little woman went with me to buy this press, and then the situation turned into a situation. Oh, well, you can go watch the video if you haven't seen it. Now, I'll put a sheet of paper on the bottom platen of this press just to keep from scratching the chrome up. My main objective is going to be to get the bearing started straight in the bore. You don't want to start pressing a bearing down crooked into the bore. That's a big problem. All right, the first arm came out perfect. Now let's see if we can get the second arm to come out straight. Let me show you how crooked the bearing sits in there when you first put it in. See, if you machine that counter bore down in there, a slip fit, that eliminates that problem. Now the fun part. assembling all these freshly polished chrome parts back together with new bearings and clean screw threads. And you'll notice I snapped a picture on my iPhone before I took it apart so I know exactly how it goes back together. Now these are the custom stainless steel shoulder screws that the Machinist made back in the 70s, and they've got a big wide slot in them, so I'm just using this small screwdriver to snug them up, and I'll get a big giant screwdriver out that fits the slot better to tighten them up fully so I don't take any chance stripping out these beautiful screws the guy made. Here we go. I got the Big Daddy snap-on screwdriver out to snug these up real good and tight. Now this heim joint linkage is the next piece that goes on, and it has 1/4-inch, 1/4-28 bolts that go down through it. But the ones that were in it, they were old chrome from the 70s, but the chrome had all flaked off and they were mostly just rust. There really wasn't anything to polish up. So what I did is I went to Lowe's and I bought some brand new stainless steel 1/4-28 bolts, and we'll polish those up. I got a special trick to show you on polishing those up. The first thing I want to do is get rid of these letters off the heads. I want the heads to be nice and smooth so they look like chrome after they're polished up. Now I could chuck these up in a lathe and machine those letters off, and I've done that before, but I found a faster, easier way is to use these Scotch-Brite pads. I guess that's what you call them. They're like a hard Scotch-Brite. But I try to find a almost worn out one because they're really aggressive and you don't need that much aggression to get rid of just those little letters on a stainless steel bolt head. All right, here's my trick for you. For polishing up stainless steel bolt heads or screw heads, just chuck them up in your cordless drill. Don't over tighten them. You don't want to mess the threads up, but if you just snug them, it won't hurt the threads at all. And you're going to be amazed at how fast you can polish up bolt heads. Now, like I showed you on last week's show, I'm just going to use a little bit of mother's polish. I get a big glob on my finger, and I just dab a little bit on the bolt head and polish, and then reapply as I go. I mean, it really makes this a fast process. I mean, look at that shine. That's just after what, 15, 20 seconds of buffing? Now, as Ernest T. Bass would say, how you like that, Charlene? Now, the lock nuts that's going on the bottom side of these bolts, we'll do them just like we did the nuts last week. We'll use a real small tapered punch, and we'll just shine them up with some others. I won't cover much of this. You guys saw it all last video. But this is how you do it, just in case you didn't see last week's video. Take the ribbon from your hair, shake it loose and let it fall, laying soft against your skin like the shadows on the wall. Come and lay down by my side till the early morning light. All I'm asking is your time. Help me make it through the night. Well, right after my coffee break, I got a package delivered. Now, I'm constantly ordering parts for all these different projects, but lately, since I've been ordering stuff for the bad coupe, I get really excited when a package shows up. I mean, I'm really excited about this whole bad coupe project. What about you guys? Like I told you guys before, a lot of the bolts on the bad coupe's engine are just so corroded they're really not worth trying to save. So I wanted to find a vintage Gardner Westcott bolt kit, small block Chevy, to use on the bad coupe, and preferably one that was period correct. Now, I don't think this is 1970s. It looks like the labels are printed like with the old dot matrix type printer, so I'm guessing it's 1980s. But hey, we're only 10 years off. At least it's vintage. Now, I've got a story pertaining as to why I wanted specifically a Gardner Westcott bolt kit. And I know what you're thinking. Puddin' Creek, you got a story about everything. Well, that's what the little woman tells me, too. You see, when I was a little bitty Puddin' Creek, about 14 or 15 years old, and I was trying to build that 1938 Chevy Coupe that I keep telling you guys about. I bought this book right here at the grocery store, I think, on the magazine stand to learn how to do custom painting, and it had this article in it on how to detail your engine and chassis. Now, a few weeks ago, when I did that video and painted the purple paint down in between the fins of that Cal Custom oil pan, a few of you guys mentioned that I was doing it all wrong, wiping the paint off with a t-shirt stretched around my index finger and using lacquer thinner to wipe the paint off the fins. You guys told me what I should do is take a 1/4-inch masking tape or 1/8-inch masking tape and mask those fins off and then just pull the tape off when I'm done. And some of you told me I should be putting Vaseline on the fins and spray them and then wipe the Vaseline off. And I guess you wondered where I got such a stupid idea to do it the way I did it, with the t-shirt and a lacquer thinner and my index finger. Well, here you go. I learned it back in 1982. Now, in this article that taught me how to paint my valve covers, it also mentioned things that you could do to dress up your engine and chassis, and one of the things it mentioned was you could order polished stainless steel bolts or chrome bolts from a company called Gardner Westcott. Now, that's the first time I'd ever seen that name, Gardner Westcott, but it's stuck in my brain all these years. I mean, back when I was 14 or 15 years old in 1982 or so, having chrome bolts on your engine, now that was tall dog stuff right there. Now, see, to build my 1938 Chevrolet, I was on a budget. And at 14 and 15 years old, the only employment available to me was working for local farmers, helping them to haul hay and cut tobacco and get it in the barn. And those jobs paid between $3 and $3.50 an hour, depending on how good the farmer was doing. Well, $3.50 an hour, that don't buy no chrome bolts for your engine. That buys the second option that this article gave you. If you couldn't afford the chrome bolts, you just simply torqued down your regular bolts and then took a little paint and a small brush and painted the heads on them. $3.50 an hour, that was my option, and that's what I did. Now, this article, it told all the things they ordered to do their project chassis and engine, and it taught you how to smooth your welds out and fill them with Bondo and make them look slick, and I did all that to my chassis, and I did everything but order the expensive stuff. You see on this chassis, they've got stainless steel exhaust. I couldn't afford that. They've got a lot of chrome. I couldn't afford that. They've got the wire wheels. I couldn't afford those. They've got the old school radial TAs. Do you guys notice how the old 1970s and early 80s radial TAs had that squared off tread? Look at the edge of the tread, how squared off it is. If you look at the new radial TAs, they're all rounded off. That's the reason those old 70s and 80s BF Goodrich radial TAs look so cool. They almost look like a bias ply tire. The new ones don't look that good at all. The ones I've got on Lady Luck, they just really don't compare. Anyway, this is how their project chassis came out, and I followed it and tried to do the exact same thing to my chassis, except on a budget, a farm boy budget. And all I could afford really out of this whole deal was the yellow Excel spark plug wires and the paint. Now, the hot color for a hot rod in the early 80s was Porsche Indian Red. That was a big deal. So I knew I wanted it Porsche Indian Red. And in the article, they had used Ditzler paint. So I thought, well, if I could get Ditzler paint, that'd be great too. Just so happens our local auto parts store was a PPG dealer, and they hooked me up with the paint and the thinner and sandpaper and primer and everything I needed for, I don't remember how much, but it was totally affordable back then. So I got the chassis all cleaned and prepped and primered, and then I got my dad to help me spray the red. And I remember once we got it all sprayed, he stepped back and he looked at it and he said, you should have painted it Massey Ferguson red. That's a better looking red than that Porsche junk. Now, I was so excited to get this Gardner Westcott chrome bolt kit that I just had to pop a couple of bolts out and stick them in this water neck just to see what they look like. Now, obviously, when Doug, our engine builder, gets hold of this intake, he'll have to put the proper thermostat, whatever he recommends for the engine he's building, in it, and a gasket and a little dab of Permatex. Right now, we're just gawking at these chrome bolts. These washers and bolts have been in this blister pack so long that the paper's actually stuck to the chrome. I mean, they've been in here since the 1980s. Now, you guys remember how I told you back in 1982 when I could not afford these Gardner Westcott chrome bolts to go on my engine, that I thought having chrome bolts on your engine was tall dog stuff? Well, I'm an old dude now, and I think I paid $60 for this chrome bolt kit off eBay. And $60 won't kill me at this point in my life. I won't have to miss a meal to buy a $60 bolt kit. But in my mind, having chrome bolts on your engine, that's still tall dog stuff. While we've got the intake out on the workbench, let's go ahead and install the carburetor spacers or adapter plates, whichever one you want to call them. Now, if you remember, I polished these up a while back, but the reason I haven't installed them is because I wanted to order some real good quality gaskets to go under them, hopefully to prevent any seeping. And also the screws that were in them when I took them apart were all rounded out. If you remember, I had a real hard time getting one of the screws out, so I ordered new screws to go in them. Now right here are the screws that came in these plates, and specifically this is a screw that I just about couldn't get out. I had to take a punch and peck it out. And what I ordered to replace them are these low head, socket head cap screws. I'll explain that in just a minute. They are zinc plated with a clear coating, and they have a socket head, which means you use an Allen wrench to tighten them and loosen them, and that should prevent them from getting stripped out again. This is a standard or regular sized head, socket head cap screw. I know some of you guys are going to say, hey, that's an Allen bolt, but the proper name is a socket head cap screw. The ones I order for this manifold are called low head socket head cap screws, and I think that's pretty self-explanatory. I ordered these screws from McMaster-Carr. I learned about McMaster-Carr back when I was a young man, and I worked in a maintenance department for a while. The crusty old maintenance supervisor, he always said, you can order anything from a Band-Aid to a battleship out of that McMaster-Carr catalog. Now, the first day I got moved to this maintenance department, the cantankerous old maintenance supervisor, he told me right off the bat, he said, now, son, I don't allow no lollygagging in my maintenance department. I expect you to stay busy all day long. He said, if you come up on a machine that's broke, fix it. If you come up on a machine that's not broke, don't fix it. And if you come up on a machine that's broke and you don't know how to fix it, paint the son of a... Now, I just barely snugged those screws up. All I'm doing right now is I need that adapter plate to hold the gasket in place so I can flip it over and mark it for trimming. Yes, I'm going to trim those fancy Mr. Gasket gaskets up. I want to make them the exact size of the intake manifold. I don't want any extra gasket material sticking out and blocking our chrome reflection. I want the chrome on the underside of the adapter plates to reflect off the chrome on the intake manifold. I mean, I got a lot of work in polishing all this stuff up. You know, show car stuff. I always use a ballpoint pen to do this instead of a pencil. That way you don't take any chances on tearing the gasket. And also something about that ball, it just glides right along the edge of the intake manifold. Works really nice. Well, that was the easy part. Now the hard part is actually cutting the gasket without messing it up. You know, Mr. Gasket, they're awful proud of their gaskets. These weren't cheap. Now, what I use to do this is the old Stanley 1299 razor knife. If I remember my history correctly, these are from the 1940s, but the reason I use them is because they're short and stubby, and they just fit right in the palm of your hand, and you can turn radiuses with them really nice. Now, I wish I had a really cool story to tell you guys about this knife. I wish I could tell you some old carpenter left it to me in his wheel along with all of his tools, and that he carried this knife in his leather tool belt his whole career, and that he was one of the carpenters in the 1940s that helped build Graceland in Memphis, and most likely this knife was used to help build Graceland. But I can't lie to you guys. This knife has no story whatsoever. I bought a box of junk at an estate sale for $5, and this knife was down in the bottom of it. I was too stupid to even know I was getting the knife. I didn't even see it when I bought it. It was just down in the bottom under a bunch of junk, and I found it when I got home. Now, I'm going super slow because I want a nice clean cut, and also because I only have 2 of these gaskets, I don't want to mess one of them up. I know you guys are going to light me up in the comments and tell me this is the wrong way to do it, that I should be using an X-Acto knife or some other method. But you guys know me, I like to work with these old vintage tools. To me, that just makes it all more fun. All right, I got both gaskets trimmed up and they match the intake perfectly now. They came out really good. And I took a little bit of this gasket cinch and I glued them down so that it'll hold them perfectly in place, because I want to go in and match the gasket to the throats of the intake. They're hanging over just a little bit in a few spots, and I wanted them glued down and held in place, and that way I can trim the gasket with it in place. Now, I know some of you are wondering, How come the little woman's not helping out in the shop this week or opening any viewer mail? Well, the little woman's gone to the beach with her girlfriends. Right before she left, she told me there's plenty of food in the pantry. You'll be fine. So I started getting hungry, and I started walking around the house looking for this mysterious pantry room. Well, I think I found it, but there ain't any food in here. There's nothing in here but ingredients. Now, ingredients, that don't help me at all. You guys keep me in your thoughts. This is going to be a long week. Well, friends and neighbors, that's our show for this week. We sure appreciate you guys coming back every Monday to watch our shenanigans and see what we've got ourselves into. Leave us a comment and let us know what state you're watching from or what country you're watching from. We always like to see that. And as always, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already.